The town was called River Crossing. No one really knew why it was called that. There wasn't a river nearby, just an old swamp shrouded in dense willow trees and a road that led into the forest. The town was small, with just a few streets, a couple of shops, Chuck's bar, and an old movie theater that was rarely visited. The houses were tightly packed together, with peeling paint and creaking shutters. In the summer, the air was heavy and humid, and even during the day, it seemed as if the sun was afraid to enter. Children rarely played outside, as there were many old stories about the forests and swamps surrounding the town. These stories included tales of missing people, nighttime screams, and the feeling that someone was always watching. The main character was James Harper. He was 16 years old, and this summer was special. His parents had gone on vacation, leaving James alone in a house on the outskirts of the city. The house was located on a hill, overlooking an old abandoned factory that had once provided employment for the entire town. James had never particularly loved the house, but being alone allowed him to do whatever he wanted without the pressure of his parents' expectations. In the evening, when the sun was setting, James heard a creaking sound in the attic. At first, he thought it was just the old boards reacting to the evening chill, but the creaking sound continued to repeat itself, as if someone was carefully taking step after step. "Who's there?" he said loudly, trying to sound confident. There was no response. Only the creaking sound continued, and the dark corners of the room seemed to be alive. James climbed the creaking stairs to the attic. It was dark, and the smell of musty dust hung thickly in the air. He turned on his flashlight. Old boxes covered in cobwebs lay on the floor, but something made him freeze. A shadow appeared on the wall that wasn't there before. It moved independently of his position, slowly sliding across the boards. "It's just a shadow," James said to himself, trying to suppress the tremor in his voice. But the shadow continued to approach, and at that moment, he heard a soft whisper. "James." The name sounded as if someone was standing right behind him. James turned around, but he didn't see anyone. His heart started beating faster. He turned on the lights at full volume, but the shadow didn't disappear. It seemed to dissolve into the air. That night, James couldn't sleep. He lay in his room, listening to every creak and rustle. Sometimes it seemed as if the walls were whispering, as if the house itself was alive and observing. The next day, James went to the town. He wanted to make sure that it was all just a figment of his imagination. But the people he met looked strange. Their eyes were tired, their faces were pale, and no one would look him in the eye. The old people on the benches whispered as he passed by, and the children hid behind the fences, as if they were afraid that he would bring something terrible with him. Late that evening, when James returned home, he found a small note on his doorstep. There was only one word on it, written in a thin, almost invisible handwriting: "Go." He didn't understand who could have left the note. His parents weren't home. He didn't know any adults who would do such a thing. But a strange feeling gripped him. This note couldn't be ignored. The next night, James heard the creaking in the attic again. But now there were more shadows. They moved independently, intertwining, creating patterns on the walls. The whispers grew louder, and now it wasn't just his name, but entire phrases that he could barely make out. "Here we are waiting." And when James reached the attic, he saw that one of the dark figures, tall and thin, with eyes that glowed red, was standing right in front of him. It didn't move, but its presence was palpable, oppressive. James froze. Who are you?" he managed to say. The figure didn't respond with words. Instead, it slowly raised its hand, pointing at the attic door. And at that moment, James realized that everything he had thought about his city His home and himself was a lie. He took a step toward the door. The figure disappeared. But the feeling of dread remained. And from that moment on, James knew that something had begun in River Crossing that he would never understand. The next morning, James could not remember how he had fallen asleep. The attic was empty, the darkness gone, but the strange feeling remained. Every sound seemed too loud, every rustle too familiar. He knew that the house was watching him. James decided to check out the abandoned factory that he could see from his window. It was an old brick building with crumbling windows and rusted gates. Once upon a time, hundreds of people worked there. But now, only the wind blew through the walls, creating eerie moans. As James approached, he noticed that someone had left footprints, thin imprints, as if someone had walked barefoot among the rusted metal structures. He felt a chill that went straight to his bones, but his curiosity overcame his fear. Inside the factory, it was completely dark. The sun's rays barely illuminated the rusty pipes and debris. James heard a rustling sound. Suddenly, the shadows began to move. They were more than just darkness. They had a shape long and twisted, as if the darkness itself had come to life. "Who's there?" he shouted. But the echo distorted his words, and then he saw it. In the back of the shop, a creature stood tall and thin, its head hidden under a hood of darkness. Red eyes glared out at him like two embers. James felt a chill run down his back. The creature took a step toward him, and each step sounded like a hammer striking metal. I can help you," James said, not believing his own words. The creature stopped. It tilted its head, and James saw that there was nothing under the hood, only an emptiness as black as the darkness itself. "You don't understand," it whispered in a voice that wasn't a voice, but an echo in his head. "We've been here for a long time, waiting." James's heart started beating faster. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The creature was getting closer, and every step it took seemed to consume the light. James closed his eyes and felt his mind sinking into a strange void. When he opened his eyes, he was in a different place. It looked like a city, but it was empty. The buildings were there, but no one lived in them. There were no people on the streets, and the air was thick like water. James realized that this was not a city on Earth, but a parallel world. "Welcome, James," a voice said. "You've lived among humans for too long, thinking no one could see you. We see everything. We await anyone who dares to enter our boundaries." Then James saw them, the shadows he had seen at home and at the factory, gathering around him. They had no bodies, but they were alive, moving independently like water, but as black as ink. He felt a terror he had never experienced before. It wasn't a fear of death, but a fear of existence, a feeling that his consciousness was dissolving in this place. "You can leave, if you dare," the creature whispered. "But every step back will be more expensive than you can imagine." James took a step. He immediately felt something clinging to him, as if the darkness itself was trying to pull him back. He looked around and saw the old factory, his house, and his city dissolving, leaving only emptiness and the red eyes staring back at him. He realized one thing. This was not a dream. It was a world where darkness chose its own victims. And now James was caught. He took another step, and he heard a whisper that pierced every cell in his body. "Welcome to River Crossing. Forever."